How many of you have ever had explained to you why the church at Vatican II called for reform in the liturgy? This is really typical in the sense that when I was researching this particular topic, I was awestruck that very few people that I met really understood why the Second Vatican Council instituted liturgical reform. At my best guess, growing up Catholic, I had heard rumors about the Tridentine Mass, and I just naturally assumed that it was to do so simply to get more people involved, or to make it more user-friendly, or just basically you've got a presentation in English versus a presentation in Latin. But it never even dawned on me that there were profound theological, wonderful reasons for the liturgical reform. Never even occurred to me. It actually, I came across the concept quite by accident. About 2 years ago, I was studying in my class that I'm taking for my master's degree on the Second Vatican documents, or the Second Vatican Council documents. And it was really more in passing that my professor read across this line, and it was earth-shattering to me. I will get to that in just a minute, but it was almost like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Why have I never been told this? And it's really rather remarkable. They say that the best place to hide something is underneath your nose. You ever heard that before? The best place to hide something is underneath your nose, or underneath their nose. And in many respects, that's very true here. That as I kind of go through this, many of you, I hope that this presentation for you is somewhat life-altering, especially in how you see the Mass, how you think of yourself in participating with the Mass. Because as I kind of explain a little bit about what this means, what that means, it's going to click. And you're probably going to feel a little excited. After I began to understand some of these concepts, I found myself wanting to go to Mass as often as I possibly could, simply because of the power that we can tap into for there. So basically, over the past 7 years, I have been able to work full-time for the church. It has been wonderful. Although I have heard a lot of people make comments about the Mass saying it's boring. You ever heard that before? The Mass is boring? Have you ever felt that before? I would say that many of us have. I've had many people suggest, especially with my days of youth ministry, that we needed more lively music. Everybody's in favor of more lively music. Great, okay? We need better readers or better homilies, more flash, more laity involvement, all these things. But I never once heard anyone ever say, the problem with the Mass is that we don't understand the significance of it. And that's really the problem. The problem is not so much that it's not entertaining enough. That may be a side issue. Sure, we can deal with that. But the real problem is that we do not understand the significance in our lives of the Mass, and where that fits in. We're much more excited oftentimes about going to a football game than we are about going to Mass. But if we really understood how incredible the events that were surrounding the Mass, what that was, we would be cheering all the more loudly at Mass than we would be at a football game. By the way, I'm not encouraging you to cheer at the Mass. I'm just saying that by comparison there. What struck me in this study was I had assumed that the reasons why the Second Vatican Council had changed the Mass is to make it more entertaining, make it more involving, make it more engaging in some way. And so I began to reflect about why is it that people still want more? They want more changes. They want it to be more, I hate to say it, but more like some Protestant churches that they know of. For many people, the changes and the reforms of the Vatican II did not go far enough. I want to encourage you that if you find yourself thinking that, I want to encourage you tonight to suspend that thought for a little bit. The changes were perfect. It was an ecumenical council. As Catholics, we really don't have a right to disagree so much with an ecumenical council. I've met other people who felt the changes of the Mass went way too far. You know, we've heard some people, and maybe you've wrestled with this yourself. Why did they change it? You know, we may ask, and I bet if you've been asking why did they change the Mass, it's never really been really well explained. I hope to make up a little bit for that this evening. The careful reforms of the Mass were to make the mystery of the Mass more understandable and include the faithful as a critical part of the celebration. The next I'll quote from the Constitution of the Sacred Liturgy. This is one of the documents of the Vatican II. It reads, "The rite of the Mass is to be revised." Remember, it hasn't been revised yet. This is how the guidelines that they're using of how it should be revised. "The rite of the Mass is to be revised in such a way that the intrinsic nature and purpose of its several parts, as well as the connection between them, may be more clearly manifested, and that the devout and active participation by the faithful may be more easily achieved." I want to really emphasize, all the changes were not done to mess things up. They were there to try to make it so that it would be more obvious what they meant. Far from removing the mystery of the Mass, the changes were to make the mysteries come alive. That was the whole purpose of them. They were trying to make many of these mysteries that the previous rite, the mysteries were present, but they were not as open, you might say. In the research that I did, I came across a concept here that I confirmed from a number of very important sources. The basic reason, one of the basic reasons, was because we, as Catholics, we have a doctrine of the royal priesthood. It is also called the common priesthood. This specific part is a priesthood of the laity. If you really want to throw someone for a loop, I like to use this on people when they approach me and they say, you know, why do Catholics not ordain, or why do Catholics not allow women to be priests? May I see a show of hands of women here who have been baptized? Women here who have been baptized? In this definition, you are all priests. Kind of interesting, isn't it? Now, I want to make a very sharp distinction here. There is what is called the common priesthood, or the royal priesthood. I will use those two terms interchangeably. And what is called the ministerial priesthood. And they're radically different. They're ordered to each other. They both, in a way, share in the one priesthood of Christ, but in a different way. Father Stan is a ministerial priest. None of us share in that. He's the only one that can administer the sacraments. He's the only one that can consecrate Mass, hear confessions, those kind of things. You and I certainly cannot do that. And I'm going to show you a little bit how they're ordered to one another. The purpose of including the faithful in the liturgy went far beyond just trying to make them feel more included. The Council wished to awaken, or rather reawaken, this doctrine of the common priesthood of the laity. My next quote is from the Constitution of the Sacred Liturgy. "Mother Church earnestly desires that all the faithful should be led to that full, conscious, and active participation in liturgical celebrations which is demanded by the very nature of the liturgy, and to which the Christian people, a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a redeemed people," that is a quote from 1 Peter 2:9, "have a right and obligation by reason of their baptism." I want to emphasize that this is so important that the Council adds, immediately after it says this, that the full and active participation by all the people is the aim to be considered before all else. For it is the primary and indispensable source from which the faithful are to derive a true Christian spirit.